A 21-year-old virgin decides to give her virginity to the most feared millionaire in the city. When the millionaire offers to buy her first intimate experience, a game of power, silence, and control begins, and nothing will ever be the same. If this story caught your interest, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Stay tuned. Olivia Reed had mastered the art of invisibility long before she could name the hollow feeling that lingered in her chest. At 21, she moved through Boston's crowded streets like a ghost, her shoulders slightly hunched, her gaze trained on the sidewalk. She had perfected the ability to navigate spaces without disturbing a single molecule of air around her. The morning light filtered through the tall windows of the Harrington Convention Center, casting golden rectangles across the polished marble floor. Olivia adjusted her temporary staff badge, the plastic digging slightly into her collarbones. This was her third temporary position this month, reception desk at a charity gala for Boston's elite. The pay was decent enough to cover next month's rent for her modest studio apartment near Somerville. "Remember absolute professionalism," her supervisor stressed, scanning the staff lineup with hawk-like precision. "The guests tonight represent the wealthiest people in New England. One complaint and you're done." Olivia nodded mechanically. She was good at following rules, at blending in. Life had taught her that survival depended on it. Growing up in a household where emotions were weaponized and love was always conditional, she'd learned to observe carefully before acting, to speak only when spoken to make herself useful without being noticed. "Miss Reed, you'll be handling the VIP check-in," her supervisor announced, breaking into her thoughts. "Just smile, scan their tickets, and direct them to the East Wing, nothing more, nothing less." The convention center transformed as evening approached. Crystal chandeliers glowed overhead, and the air filled with the scent of expensive perfume and freshly cut flowers. Olivia stood behind her assigned station, watching as Boston's elite arrived in waves of designer clothing and practiced smiles. 3 hours into her shift, the atmosphere in the entrance hall shifted subtly. Conversations quieted, heads turned. Even the security personnel seemed to straighten their postures. Olivia sensed the change before she saw its cause. Then he appeared, and the entire room seemed to hold its breath. Maxwell Blackwood moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had never been denied anything in life. Tall and imposing, his custom-tailored suit emphasized broad shoulders and a physique that spoke of disciplined mornings at exclusive gyms. But it was his eyes that captivated Olivia, steel gray and utterly unreadable, like looking at a locked door. At 38, Blackwood had built Titan Enterprises from a modest tech startup into a global empire with tentacles reaching into everything from pharmaceuticals to artificial intelligence. His name appeared regularly in financial publications, always accompanied by speculation about his ruthless business tactics and the mysterious fate of those who crossed him. Mr. Blackwood, the event coordinator, practically materialized beside him, voice pitched high with nervous excitement. "We're honored by your presence tonight." Maxwell Blackwood barely acknowledged the greeting, his gaze sweeping the room with clinical detachment. Then, unexpectedly, his eyes locked with Olivia's. For 3 heartbeats, she couldn't look away. Something in his stare felt eerily familiar, as though he recognized her from somewhere she couldn't recall. The moment stretched, electric and uncomfortable, before she finally lowered her eyes to the digital tablet in front of her. "Ticket, sir?" she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. A small smile played at the corner of his mouth, not warm but vaguely amused. "I believe my assistant handled that detail." He spoke softly, his voice a well-modulated baritone that required others to lean in to hear him. Another form of power, Olivia realized. "Of course, Mr. Blackwood," she quickly scanned the guest list. "You're all set." "The East Wing is—" "I know where it is," he interrupted, his tone neither rude nor particularly polite, just factual. As he passed her station, he paused briefly. "You have unusual eyes," he commented. "Heterochromia, isn't it? One brown, one green." Olivia froze. Most people never noticed, or if they did, they didn't comment on it, certainly not strangers at formal events. "Yes," she replied simply. Genetic chimera, he said, as if cataloguing her. Rare. Then he continued on his way, leaving Olivia with a strange feeling of having been studied rather than seen. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Occasionally she would glimpse Blackwood across the room, always standing slightly apart from the circles of conversation around him. People approached him with that peculiar mixture of eagerness and caution reserved for dangerous predators. He spoke little, drank nothing, and left precisely at 11 without saying goodbye to anyone. 2 days later, Olivia returned to her apartment after another temp job, this time filing paperwork at a dentist's office to find a package waiting outside her door. No sender information, just her name printed in precise block letters. Inside lay a leather-bound book, a first edition of The Secret Garden, her favorite childhood novel, the one comfort during those silent days when her mother would withhold affection as punishment for imagined offenses. There was no note, no explanation, just the book, its pages smelling of time and someone else's history. A week passed. Olivia's phone bill, which she had been dreading, showed as paid in full. The following day, her landlord mentioned that her next 3 months' rent had been covered by an anonymous benefactor. People at her usual coffee shop suddenly knew her name, held her regular order ready. Each night she lay awake, a growing uneasiness settling in her stomach. Someone was watching her. Someone knew details about her life that she hadn't shared. The realization should have terrified her, but instead it awakened something else, a dangerous curiosity. When the text message came, she almost expected, "Chelsea, your presence is requested tomorrow, 8 p.m. A car will be waiting." No signature, but she didn't need one. Somehow she knew exactly who had sent it. The sensible response would be to ignore it, to report it, to run. Instead, she found herself by the window the following evening, watching as a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. The driver, expressionless, behind dark sunglasses despite the late hour, opened the door without a word. Olivia hesitated on the threshold of her apartment. 21 years of caution screamed at her to stay put, to lock the door, to disappear back into the safety of invisibility. But another voice, one she barely recognized as her own, whispered of curiosity, of change, of finally being seen. She stepped into the car. The drive took less than 30 minutes, winding through Boston's historic streets until they reached the waterfront. The vehicle stopped before a renovated warehouse, all glass and steel and exclusivity, overlooking the harbor. The structure seemed to float above the water, illuminated from within like a modern lighthouse. "Penthouse," the driver said, the first and only word he would speak to her. The elevator required a keycard, which he provided, and then she was ascending alone, her heart pounding in her throat. The doors opened directly into a space that seemed carved from the night sky itself, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the twinkling city lights and dark water beyond. And there, silhouetted against the view, stood Maxwell Blackwood. "You came," he said simply, not a question, not quite surprise. Most wouldn't have. "Why am I here?" Olivia asked, finding her voice. He turned fully toward her then, his expression still that unreadable mask. "Because you intrigue me, and because I have a proposition for you." "What kind of proposition?" She remained by the elevator, maintaining distance between them. "A transaction," he replied, his voice clinical and detached. "I want to purchase your first intimate experience, one night, $500,000. The words hung in the air between them, impossible and obscene. Olivia felt her cheeks burn with shock and indignation. "Excuse me." "You're untouched." "I want that experience." He stated it as plainly as if discussing the weather. "The amount is negotiable if you find it insufficient." Olivia's hand found the elevator button. "I'm leaving." "Consider it," he said, not moving to stop her. "You have my number now. Think about what that money could do for you, for your mother's medical bills, for your education." The elevator doors closed on his knowing smile, leaving Olivia shaking with anger and confusion. How did he know about her mother's health issues? What else did he know? More importantly, why did a man who could have anyone become fixated on someone like her, someone who had spent her entire life learning how to be invisible. For 3 days, Olivia tried to forget Maxwell Blackwood's proposition. She threw herself into her temp work, took extra shifts at a local bookstore, and walked the long way home each night to avoid the street where the black car had waited. But his words echoed in her mind, along with the impossible sum he had offered, $500,000 for something she had never valued as currency. On the 4th day, a bouquet of white lilies arrived at her apartment. No card, no message. Just the flowers, arranged with mathematical precision in a crystal vase worth more than her monthly rent. The lilies were her favorite, though she couldn't remember ever telling anyone that. That evening, after her shift ended, she found herself walking to the Boston Public Library. In the quiet sanctuary of the reference section, she typed Maxwell Blackwood's name into the search bar. Thousands of results appeared: business profiles, financial analysis, speculation about his ruthless acquisition strategies. But personal details were conspicuously scarce. No mention of family, friends, or relationships. The few photographs showed him at corporate events, always slightly removed from others, expression neutral and unreadable. One article caught her attention, a profile from 5 years ago, featuring rumors about a former executive who had disappeared after threatening to reveal company secrets. The case had been investigated and closed. The executive eventually discovered living under a new identity in Greece. But the damage to Blackwood's reputation lingered, feeding whispers about what happened to those who crossed him. Researching. The dragon in his den. The voice startled her. Olivia looked up to find a man watching her from the adjacent table, his expression friendly but appraising. He appeared to be in his mid-30s, with intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and an easy smile that somehow didn't reach those eyes. "Excuse me?" she replied, instinctively closing the browser window. "Maxwell Blackwood," he clarified, nodding toward her computer. "I couldn't help noticing. Most people in Boston are smart enough to admire him from a very safe distance." Something about his tone made Olivia wary. "I'm just doing research for work," she lied smoothly. "Of course." His smile widened slightly. "I'm Daniel Harlow, by the way, Boston Chronicle." "A journalist?" Olivia felt her guard rise further. "Olivia Reed," she responded, offering nothing more. "Well, Olivia Reed," Daniel said, sliding a business card across the table. "If you ever want to discuss your research further, give me a call. I've spent years trying to piece together the real story behind Titan Enterprises. It's always good to meet someone else who's curious." After he left, Olivia examined the card, tracing her finger over the embossed letters. Something about Daniel Harlow felt off, too convenient, too interested. She tucked the card into her pocket and gathered her things, suddenly feeling exposed in the public space. That night, unable to sleep, she finally texted the number saved in her phone. "Why?" "Me?" The response came within seconds, as if he had been waiting. "Because you understand silence. Tomorrow, same time." Olivia stood before her mirror the next evening, barely recognizing her reflection. She had spent her last savings on a simple black dress, nothing extravagant but a far cry from her usual practical attire. Her hair, usually pulled back in a practical ponytail, fell in soft waves around her shoulders. The same driver arrived precisely at 8. This time, the car took her to a different location, a historic brownstone in Beacon Hill, discreet and elegant. The interior surprised her, not the ultra-modern aesthetic of the penthouse, but something warmer, filled with books and antique furniture. It felt like a sanctuary rather than a showroom. Maxwell Blackwood stood by a fireplace, the flames casting his features in gold and shadow. He wore no jacket, his white shirt open at the collar, revealing a vulnerability that seemed calculated rather than natural. "You haven't accepted my offer," he stated as she entered. "Yet you're here." "I want to understand what this is really about," Olivia replied, maintaining her distance. "No one pays that amount for what you're asking, especially not from someone like me." Something flickered across his face, irritation, perhaps, or surprise at being questioned. "Someone like you," he repeated slowly. "And what exactly do you think you are?" The question caught her off guard. "Ordinary," she answered honestly. "Invisible." Maxwell approached her then, moving with that same controlled precision she had noticed at the gala. He stopped just short of touching distance. "You are many things, Olivia Reed, but invisible is not one of them. Not to me." For the first time, she noticed something in his eyes beyond coldness, a searching quality, as though he were trying to decipher a complex equation. He reached out slowly, giving her time to retreat, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. The touch was clinical, experimental rather than affectionate. "You don't express emotions the way others do," she observed quietly. His hand dropped. "No," he agreed. "I don't." "Why?" "We're discussing you, not me," he deflected, moving away to pour 2 glasses of water, not wine, she noted. "Actually, we're discussing a transaction," Olivia countered, finding unexpected courage. "And I need to understand what I'm selling before I agree to a price." Maxwell turned back to her, a ghost of admiration crossing his features. Most people would have simply named a higher figure. "I'm not most people." "No," he conceded. "You're not." He handed her a glass, careful not to let their fingers touch. "I have a condition called alexithymia. Are you familiar with it?" Olivia shook her head. "It's a neurological condition that affects how I process emotions," he explained, his tone detached and clinical. "I experience feelings, but I struggle to identify them, to put words to them, to recognize them in others. It's like being colorblind to emotional nuance." Olivia absorbed this information, pieces falling into place. His precise movements, the calculating stare, the way he seemed to study rather than connect with those around him. "So this arrangement," she ventured carefully. "It's what? An experiment?" Maxwell's expression remained neutral. "In a manner of speaking, my condition makes conventional relationships challenging. I don't experience attraction or connection the way others do, but there is something about you that disrupts my patterns. I find myself thinking about you, noticing details. It's unprecedented. And you think purchasing my virginity will help you understand why?" The bluntness of her question seemed to startle him. "I think clarity often comes through direct experience," he replied evenly. "The financial component ensures clear boundaries and expectations." Olivia placed her untouched water on a nearby table. "I should go. You haven't given me your answer." She looked at him then, really looked, and saw something beneath the controlled facade, a profound isolation that mirrored her own, though born of different circumstances. For all his wealth and power, Maxwell Blackwood was a man stranded on an emotional island, unable to build bridges to the mainland. "No," she said finally. "My answer is no." He nodded once, accepting her decision without protest. "The offer remains open, as does my interest in knowing you better, on whatever terms you find acceptable." On the drive home, Olivia stared out at Boston's glittering skyline, her thoughts in turmoil. She had refused him, yet she felt no relief, only a strange sense of incompletion. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Interested in getting coffee tomorrow? Daniel Harlow." The journalist. How had he gotten her number? Something cold settled in her stomach. She ignored the message and watched the city lights blur past, unaware of the invisible threads beginning to tighten around her. When she arrived home, she found an envelope had been slipped under her door. Inside was a check for exactly her amount of her student loans, $48,726.43, along with a handwritten note in precise architectural script. Not a payment. Not a bribe. Simply freedom from one burden. Your decision remains your own. Olivia sat on her bed, the check trembling in her fingers. The gesture was presumptuous, manipulative, and yet the thought of being free from debt made her breath catch. She tore the check into tiny pieces, watching them scatter across her worn carpet like confetti. 2 days later, she discovered her loans had been paid in full anyway. A week passed. Then another. Olivia changed her phone number, took different routes home, even considered moving apartments. But the feeling of being watched never abated. More gifts arrived. Books whose titles echoed conversations she'd had with friends in cafes, a rare edition of poems her mother had read to her as a child. Each gift more personal than the last, each one demonstrating how thoroughly her life had been mapped. When the final text came, it wasn't from Maxwell but from a hospital administrator, informing her that her mother's medical bills had been covered by an anonymous donor. The amount, nearly $200,000, was exactly what stood between her mother and the specialized treatment she desperately needed. That night, Olivia found herself once again in the back of the black car heading toward the waterfront penthouse. This time her decision was made not from curiosity or attraction, but from the complicated calculus of love, obligation, and the weight of a debt she hadn't asked for, but couldn't ignore. Maxwell Blackwood opened the door himself, his expression revealing nothing of victory or satisfaction. "I have conditions," Olivia stated without preamble. "Name them," he replied, stepping aside to let her enter. "After tonight, no more gifts, no more payments, no more watching me without my knowledge." Her voice remained steady despite her racing heart. "And you answer my questions honestly, about yourself, about why you really chose me, about what you want beyond this." For the first time, something like respect flickered in his grey eyes. "Agreed." What followed was not at all what Olivia had expected. There was no romance, no passion, but neither was there coldness or cruelty. Instead, there was careful attention, methodical discovery, and most surprisingly, conversation. Maxwell asked questions throughout, not about her pleasure, but about her thoughts, her reactions, her understanding of what was happening between them. When it was over, he didn't ask her to leave, nor did he retreat into silence. Instead, they lay side by side, not touching, watching the lights of boats moving across the harbor below. "You feel different now," he observed clinically. "Different how?" she asked, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "I don't know," he admitted, a rare confession of uncertainty. "I lack the vocabulary for it, but something has changed." As dawn broke over the water, Olivia realized something had indeed changed, not just for him, but for her as well. She had entered his world expecting to lose something of herself. Instead, she had glimpsed something few others had seen, the complex machinery behind Maxwell Blackwood's carefully constructed facade. What she didn't know, as she dressed and prepared to leave, was that other eyes were watching their intersection, eyes filled with calculation rather than curiosity, and a patience born of long-nurtured vengeance. What began as a single night evolved into something neither Olivia nor Maxwell could define. They met twice weekly, always at either the penthouse or the brownstone, always on his territory. Their encounters had a ritual quality, beginning with conversation, moving to physical connection, and ending with those strange dawn hours where Maxwell seemed almost capable of vulnerability. 3 months into this undefined relationship, Olivia found herself transformed. Her temporary jobs had been replaced by a position at the Blackwood Foundation's literacy program, a role she had explicitly told Maxwell she wanted to earn on merit, not through his influence. Her mother had begun the specialized treatment that had once seemed financially impossible, and something inside Olivia had awakened, a voice that had been silenced through years of conditional love and careful invisibility. "You're different," her only close friend Zoe observed over coffee. "One afternoon, more present somehow, like you're actually inhabiting your own life." Olivia smiled faintly, unable to explain the complex reality behind the change. How could she describe a relationship built on transaction that had somehow evolved into something more authentic than any she had known before? "I've been thinking about going back to school," she offered instead. "Maybe finishing my psychology degree." Zoe raised an eyebrow. "That's unexpected. What brought this on?" Before Olivia could answer, her phone chimed with a notification, an email from an address she didn't recognize. The subject line made her blood freeze. Blackwood is not who you think he is. Everything okay? Zoe asked, noticing her expression. Just work, Olivia lied, tucking the phone away. Nothing important. Later, alone in her apartment, she opened the email with trembling fingers. Inside was a single image, a newspaper clipping dated 3 years ago, featuring a small article about the disappearance of a woman named Rebecca Thorne, a former executive assistant at Titan Enterprises. The text had been highlighted. Last. Seen leaving the company headquarters following reports of a heated exchange with CEO Maxwell Blackwood. At the bottom of the email was a cryptic message. She trusted him, too. Get out while you can. Olivia's mind raced. The name Rebecca. Thorne stirred something in her memory, a distant echo from childhood. She opened her laptop and searched the name, finding little beyond the same disappearance notices and a few professional photographs of a woman with auburn hair and a confident smile. In one photo, something about Rebecca's eyes caught Olivia's attention. The slight heterochromia, one eye a shade darker than the other, just like her own. Another email arrived while she was still processing the first. Ask him about Rebecca. Watch his face when you do. Olivia closed her laptop, her heart pounding. She needed time to think, to process. But before she could gather her thoughts, her phone rang. Maxwell. Tonight wasn't one of their scheduled meetings, and he rarely called outside their established patterns. Can you come to the brownstone? He asked without preamble, his voice holding that same neutral tone it always did. There's something I need to discuss. An hour later, Olivia stood in Maxwell's book-lined study, watching as he paced with uncharacteristic agitation. Something had disrupted his careful composure. One of my research journals is missing, he said finally, stopping to face her. A personal record I've been keeping for years. And you think I took it? Olivia asked, the accusation stinging despite her tone. No, he replied immediately, but its contents concern you. Olivia felt her defenses rise. What do you mean, concern me? Maxwell studied her face with that familiar analytical gaze. I've documented our interactions, my responses, the changes I've observed in myself since meeting you. You've been studying me. Olivia's voice rose slightly, like some kind of experiment. Not just you, us. For the first time, he seemed to struggle for words. The journal contains observations, yes, but also attempts to understand what happens when I'm with you. It's deeply personal. Why are you telling me this now? Because if that journal becomes public, it will affect us both. His expression remained neutral, but Olivia had learned to read the subtle tension around his eyes. He was worried. It could be misinterpreted. Olivia felt a chill run through her. Is there something in it that should worry me, Maxwell? He hesitated, just long enough for doubt to bloom. No. But context matters. And we both know that context is the first casualty of public exposure. The emails about Rebecca Thorne burned in Olivia's mind. Now was the moment to ask, to watch his face as the anonymous sender had suggested. But something held her back. She needed more information. First, who would want to take it? She asked instead. I have enemies, he replied simply. Success creates resentment. Power invites challenge. That night, Olivia didn't stay. She returned to her apartment, her thoughts in turmoil. As she approached her door, a figure emerged from the shadows of the hallway. Daniel Harlow, the journalist, leaned against the wall with casual confidence. We need to talk, Olivia, he said quietly. About Maxwell Blackwood, about Rebecca Thorne, and about why you look so much like her. Olivia's hand tightened on her keys. How did you get into this building? Daniel smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. I'm good at getting into places I'm not supposed to be. It's part of the job. I'm calling security. Before you do that, he countered smoothly, you might want to see what I found. He held up a leather-bound journal, distinctive, expensive, with the Titan Enterprises logo embossed on the cover. Fascinating reading, especially the parts about you. Olivia fought to keep her expression neutral. I don't know what that is. I think you do. Daniel's tone hardened slightly, and I think you'll want to hear what I have to say about its author. May I come in? I promise I won't stay long. Against her better judgment, Olivia unlocked her door. Self-preservation warred with curiosity, and curiosity won. Inside, Daniel placed the journal on her coffee table, but kept his hand resting on its cover. I've been investigating Maxwell Blackwood for 5 years, he began without preamble. Ever since he systematically destroyed my investment firm, bankrupted me, and walked away with the patents that should have made me wealthy instead of him. So this was personal, Olivia realized. Not journalism, but vendetta. What does this have to do with me? She asked cautiously. Rebecca Thorne, Daniel replied, watching her reaction closely. Does the name mean anything to you? Olivia hesitated, then decided on honesty. I received an email about her today. She disappeared 3 years ago. She worked for Maxwell. Daniel nodded. What the news didn't report is that Rebecca was looking into some of Blackwood's more questionable business practices, specifically how certain competitors seemed to suffer convenient accidents or scandals just before Titan acquired their assets at bargain prices. And you think Maxwell was responsible? I know he was. Daniel's confidence was absolute. Rebecca found evidence. She was going to bring it to the SEC, then she vanished. All her accounts emptied, her apartment cleaned out. Everyone assumed she'd been paid off, relocated to avoid scandal. But I knew better. How? Olivia challenged, her uneasiness growing. Daniel's expression darkened. Because we were working together, because I cared about her, and because she told me she'd found a connection to her past, a family link that Blackwood had been hiding from her. He pulled out his phone, opening a photo album, and handed it to Olivia. On screen was a picture of Daniel and Rebecca at what appeared to be a company party. Rebecca's smile was genuine, her arm linked through Daniel's. Keep scrolling, he instructed. The next photo made Olivia's breath catch. Rebecca stood beside a much younger girl, perhaps 12 years old, with the same heterochromatic eyes and similar facial structure. The resemblance was unmistakable. That's you, Daniel confirmed. Taken about 9 years ago at your mother's house in Springfield. Rebecca was your cousin, your mother's sister's daughter. The family lost touch after your aunt's passing, but Rebecca had been trying to reconnect. Memories flooded back, a distant relative visiting briefly, bringing books and stories, promising to return. Then, nothing. At the time, Olivia had assumed it was just another adult making promises they wouldn't keep. But now... How did Maxwell know about this connection? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. That's the million-dollar question. Daniel leaned forward. My theory, he's been watching Rebecca's family for years, making sure no one asked questions about her disappearance. When he saw you at that charity gala, looking so much like her, he panicked. And then he decided to keep you close, to control the situation. The implications were devastating. Every interaction, every seemingly genuine moment between her and Maxwell, recontextualized as manipulation and control. If what you're saying is true, Olivia said carefully, why would he keep a journal documenting our relationship? Wouldn't that be evidence against him? Daniel's smile was thin. Read it yourself. He pushed the journal toward her. Page 42 is particularly enlightening. With reluctant fingers, Olivia opened the journal. Inside, she found page after page of precise handwriting, clinical observations, detailed accounts of their conversations, and increasingly confused attempts to categorize emotional responses. On page 42, a passage stood out. Subject continues, to elicit unprecedented neurological responses. Proximity causes autonomic dysregulation. Heart rate increased by 24% during last encounter. Unable to maintain typical emotional distance. Finding thought patterns disrupted when attempting to focus on other matters. Concerning development, experiencing what may be categorized as concern for subject's well-being, independent of project objectives. Requires further analysis. Project objectives? Olivia read aloud, her stomach turning. Exactly, Daniel confirmed. You're not a person to him, Olivia. You're a project, a problem to solve, just like Rebecca was. Olivia closed the journal, her mind racing. What do you want from me, Daniel? Help me expose him, he replied immediately. Let me publish excerpts from this journal, with your testimony about how he manipulated you, paid for your mother's medical treatment to gain your compliance, essentially purchased your companionship. We can finally bring him down. The characterization of her relationship with Maxwell felt both true and false simultaneously. Yes, money had been the initial catalyst, but what had developed since felt more complex than simple manipulation. I need time to think, she said finally. Daniel stood, leaving the journal on her table. Don't take too long, and don't tell. Blackwood about our conversation. Men like him, men who can't feel normal emotions, they're dangerous when cornered. He placed his card on top of the journal. Call me when you're ready to do the right thing. After he left, Olivia sat motionless, staring at the journal. The revelations about Rebecca formed a painful knot in her chest. She remembered now, the kind cousin who had promised to come back for her, to help her escape the emotional prison of her mother's house. The disappearance that had felt like yet another abandonment. Had Maxwell been responsible? Had her entire relationship with him been built on calculation rather than connection? With trembling hands, she continued reading the journal, searching for clues. What she found challenged Daniel's neat narrative. While the early entries were indeed clinical and detached, the more recent ones revealed something else: confusion, frustration, and what appeared to be genuine struggle to understand the emotional changes Maxwell was experiencing. One entry from just 2 weeks ago stood out. For the first time, experiencing what may be fear, not of external threat, but of loss. Contemplated, ending project to restore emotional equilibrium. Found myself unable to proceed with termination. Cannot determine if this represents progress or deterioration of functioning. Only certainty. She has changed the internal landscape irrevocably. Olivia closed the journal, more confused than ever. Either Maxwell was experiencing genuine emotional evolution through their relationship, or he was executing an elaborate deception. Either Rebecca's disappearance was connected to him, or Daniel was manipulating that connection for his own vendetta. Her phone chimed with a text from Maxwell. Need to see you. Important. As she stared at the message, another email arrived from the anonymous sender. He knows you've seen the journal. Don't go alone. The walls seemed to close in around her. Who could she trust? What was truth and what was manipulation? For someone who had spent her life observing rather than participating, Olivia now found herself at the center of a dangerous web with no clear path to safety. And somewhere in the shadows, Rebecca's fate loomed as both warning and mystery. Whatever decision Olivia made next would either lead her to truth or ensure she shared her cousin's unknown destiny. Olivia stood at the crossroads of trust and suspicion, the journal clutched in her trembling hands. After hours of internal debate, she made her decision. She texted Maxwell. We need to talk. Meet me at the Boston Public Garden, tomorrow, noon. Public, daylight, witnesses, safety. She spent the night alternating between reading Maxwell's journal and searching for information about Rebecca. The deeper she delved, the more complicated the picture became. Rebecca hadn't simply vanished. In the weeks before her disappearance, she had liquidated assets, closed accounts, and shipped personal belongings to a storage facility in Vermont. Actions that suggested preparation rather than panic. Morning. Arrived, and with it, a new email from the anonymous sender. Be careful. Trust no one. As Olivia prepared to leave, her phone rang. Daniel. Have you made your decision? He asked without greeting. I'm meeting Maxwell today, she replied, intentionally vague. A sharp intake of breath. That's a mistake. He's dangerous, Olivia. So I told you what happened to Rebecca. You told me your theory, she corrected. I need facts. The journal isn't enough? Daniel's voice hardened. The way he's manipulated you isn't enough? Something in his tone raised Olivia's internal alarms. The intensity felt personal, beyond journalistic interest, beyond even friendship with Rebecca. "I'll call you after I speak with him," she said carefully. "Olivia, wait." She ended the call, unsettled by his urgency. The public garden bloomed, with spring's promise, cherry blossoms drifting like pink snow across manicured lawns. Olivia arrived early, positioning herself on a bench with clear sightlines in all directions. The journal lay heavy in her bag, both evidence and enigma. Maxwell appeared precisely at noon, navigating the crowded paths with that characteristic purposeful stride. He wore no suit today, just dark jeans and a grey sweater, an attempt at casual that somehow only emphasized his inherent formality. His eyes scanned the area with practiced efficiency before settling on her. "This is unexpected," he said as he sat beside her, maintaining a careful distance. "You've never suggested meeting in public before." "I've never had reason to fear you before," Olivia replied, watching his face closely. No flash of guilt, no narrowing of eyes, just that same analytical gaze, now tinged with what might be confusion. "What's changed?" he asked. Olivia withdrew the journal from her bag, placing it between them. "I know about Rebecca Thorne." Maxwell's posture shifted subtly, a tightening of shoulders, a stillness that hadn't been there before. "Where did you get that?" "Daniel Harlow brought it to me." "Harlow," Maxwell repeated, the name flat on his tongue. "Of course. He says you were responsible for Rebecca's disappearance, that you've been manipulating me because I'm her cousin, because I might ask questions someday." For the first time since she'd known him, Maxwell looked genuinely taken aback. "Her cousin?" "Second cousin," Olivia clarified. "My mother's sister's daughter. We met when I was 12. She promised to come back for me, to help me. Then she vanished." Maxwell was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the distance. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost its usual precision. "I didn't know that connection existed. It wasn't in any of the background checks." The admission startled her. "So you did investigate me, before we met?" "Yes." No attempt to soften the truth. "But not because of Rebecca, because of what you witnessed at the charity gala." "I didn't witness anything. You did." Maxwell turned to face her fully. "You observed the interaction between me and Senator Holloway, the one person who could have blocked the merger I'd been working on for 3 years. You were the only staff member positioned to overhear our conversation. I needed to know if you were a plant, placed there to gather information." Olivia struggled to recall the event. "I was just checking tickets. I barely noticed you until I approached your station," he finished. "Because by then I'd determined you weren't working for my competitors. You were simply there." "And Rebecca?" Olivia pressed, unwilling to be diverted. "What happened to her?" Maxwell's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "I didn't harm Rebecca, but I did fail her." He gestured to the journal. "That contains the truth, though I doubt Harlow showed you the relevant pages." Olivia had read the entire journal, but she waited, wanting to hear his version. "Rebecca discovered irregularities in our European acquisitions," Maxwell continued. "Not illegal activities, but aggressive strategies that operated in grey areas of international law. She approached me with concerns, thinking I was unaware of the methods my team was using." "And were you?" "I was aware," he admitted. "I had authorized them. What I hadn't anticipated was that Rebecca would be targeted for having that knowledge." "Targeted by whom?" "My former partner, the man who had designed those aggressive acquisition strategies and stood to lose everything if they were exposed." Maxwell's voice remained even, but Olivia had learned to detect the subtle changes in his cadence that signaled emotional undercurrents. "Daniel Harlow." The revelation struck Olivia like physical impact. "Daniel was your partner?" "Harlow Capital Management. We merged with Titan 7 years ago. Daniel's methods proved too controversial, borderline illegal. When Rebecca discovered evidence, I made the decision to distance Titan from those strategies, which meant severing ties with Daniel." "You forced him out," Olivia realized. "With a generous severance package and agreement to maintain professional silence," Maxwell clarified. "What I didn't know was that he had been romantically involved with Rebecca. When she disappeared, I assumed he had convinced her to leave, perhaps to avoid the scandal that was brewing. Pieces began to align in Olivia's mind. Daniel's personal vendetta, his convenient appearance in her life, his possession of Maxwell's journal. "If what you're saying is true," she said carefully, "where is Rebecca now?" For the first time, genuine regret crossed Maxwell's features. "I don't know. After she disappeared, I hired private investigators. They traced her to Vancouver, then lost the trail. My assumption was that she and Daniel had orchestrated her departure together. But now I wonder if that was true." "Why didn't you go to the authorities?" Maxwell's expression hardened. "Because the evidence she had uncovered would have implicated Titan in questionable practices, practices that, while legal, would have destroyed shareholder confidence. So I made a calculated decision. I covered up the financial irregularities, erased the evidence of what Daniel had done, and let the world believe Rebecca had simply moved on." "You chose your company over the truth," Olivia said, disappointment heavy in her chest. "I chose what I understood," he corrected. "Financial stability over emotional complexity. It's what my condition leads me to do, prioritize the quantifiable over the qualitative." They sat in silence, cherry blossoms continuing their gentle descent around them. In the distance, children laughed as they fed the swan boats, oblivious to the unveiling of secrets nearby. "So our relationship," Olivia finally asked, her voice barely audible, "was that also a calculated decision, a way to monitor me in case I knew something about Rebecca?" Maxwell studied her face with that familiar intensity. "It began that way," he admitted. "The initial approach, the financial offer, those were tactical decisions. What I couldn't calculate was how you would affect me." He reached for the journal, opening it to one of the final entries, one Olivia hadn't yet read. "I have spent my life translating human emotion into comprehensible data points, categorizing, analyzing, responding based on pattern recognition rather than internal resonance. With Subject O, this methodology has failed consistently, finding myself operating without reliable frameworks, experiencing what others might term caring without strategic purpose. Most troubling development, when considering termination of eye contact, experience physical symptoms consistent with distress. Conclusion becoming inescapable. This is no longer a project. She is no longer a subject. The precise nature of what has developed remains undefined, but its existence cannot be denied." "You're saying you have feelings for me," Olivia translated, uncertainty coloring her voice. "I'm saying you've broken my system," Maxwell replied. "For the first time in my life, I can't reduce someone to variables and equations. I don't have the emotional vocabulary to name what's happened, but I know it's real." Before Olivia could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "He's lying, meet me, I can prove it, I know where Rebecca is." As she stared at the message, another email arrived from the anonymous sender, except this time it contained only an audio file and a brief message. "Listen immediately." Olivia's hand trembled as she opened it, holding the phone between herself and Maxwell. A woman's voice filled the space between them. "If you're hearing this, something has gone wrong. My name is Rebecca Thorne. Daniel Harlow has been threatening me for weeks, claiming I owe him for protecting me from Maxwell. The truth is, I found evidence that Daniel had been embezzling from client accounts and manipulating market positions illegally. When I confronted him, he threatened to destroy me professionally. Said he would frame Maxwell and me for financial crimes if I didn't help him extract revenge against Titan. I'm leaving tonight, going somewhere he can't find me. If this recording has been released, it means Daniel has escalated his plan. He's dangerous, obsessive, don't trust him." The recording ended, leaving them in stunned silence. "She sent this to my private server," Maxwell said quietly, 3 days after she disappeared. "I never saw it because it was programmed to remain sealed unless specific keywords were searched together, her name and manipulation. When you used those terms in your email yesterday, it triggered the release." Olivia's mind raced. "So Daniel has been playing us against each other," Maxwell finished, "using your connection to Rebecca to manipulate you and using you to try to destroy me." Olivia's phone buzzed again, another message from Daniel. Meeting at Boston Harbor Hotel. 3 p.m. Come alone, last chance to save yourself. He doesn't know we have this recording, Olivia realized, a plan forming in her mind. Or that we're talking to each other. Maxwell studied her expression, something like admiration flickering in his eyes. What are you thinking? That it's time to end this game, she replied, newfound determination straightening her spine. But I'll need your help. The Boston Harbor Hotel's lobby gleamed with marble and privilege, the afternoon sun streaming through massive windows overlooking the water. Daniel Harlow sat in a secluded corner, a leather portfolio on the table before him, his expression confident as Olivia approached. You made the right choice, he greeted her, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. Olivia remained standing. Where's Rebecca? Daniel's smile tightened slightly. Safe, away from Blackwood's influence, but before I take you to her, we need to finalize our arrangement. Arrangement? Olivia echoed, recording the conversation discreetly with the phone in her pocket, just as she and Maxwell had planned. The journal, Daniel clarified. I need your written statement confirming its authenticity and your testimony about how Blackwood manipulated you financially and emotionally. Olivia slowly took the seat across from him. And if I provide those things, you'll reunite me with Rebecca? Of course. Daniel's smile didn't reach his eyes. Family should be together. That's interesting, Olivia replied calmly, considering Rebecca isn't actually alive to be reunited with. Daniel's expression froze. What are you talking about? Records from the Vancouver Police Department, Olivia continued, her voice steady despite her racing heart. A woman matching Rebecca's description was found in a hotel room 3 years ago. Drug overdose. No identification. Buried as Jane Doe. It was a calculated bluff, based on Maxwell's theory about what might have happened, and Daniel's reaction confirmed their suspicions. That's impossible, he insisted, but a flicker of panic crossed his features. I took care of... He stopped, abruptly realizing his mistake. Took care of what, Daniel? Olivia pressed. Of Rebecca? Of the evidence she had against you? Daniel's composure cracked. You don't understand what Blackwood did to me. He destroyed everything I built. Used Rebecca against me. I deserved... Justice? Olivia finished. Or revenge, because those are very different things. Daniel's eyes darted toward the hotel entrance. You brought him, didn't you? His voice hardened with accusation. You stupid girl. You had every chance to be on the winning side of this. There are no winning sides in manipulation and lies, Olivia replied, rising from her chair. Only people who get hurt. Daniel's hand shot out, gripping her wrist with bruising force. You think this ends here? I've already sent copies of that journal to every major news outlet. By tomorrow morning, Blackwood's reputation will be destroyed. The great emotional void who bought himself a plaything. It's the perfect scandal. Olivia didn't flinch. Those outlets have also received Rebecca's recording and the evidence she compiled against you before she disappeared. The financial records showing how you manipulated markets, embezzled from clients, and threatened her when she discovered it. The color drained from Daniel's face as he registered her words. Behind him, 2 police detectives approached, their expressions grim. Daniel Harlow, one detective said formally, we'd like to ask you some questions about the disappearance of Rebecca Thorne. As the detectives led Daniel away, Olivia caught sight of Maxwell standing by the hotel entrance, watching the scene unfold with that same unreadable expression. Their eyes met across the distance, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. 3 months later, Olivia stood on the balcony of Maxwell's penthouse, watching a summer storm roll across Boston Harbor. Daniel Harlow had been indicted on multiple charges of financial fraud, with the investigation into Rebecca's disappearance still ongoing. The recording had been enough to clear Maxwell of direct involvement, though his choice to conceal evidence had resulted in significant financial penalties for Titan Enterprises. The scandal had transformed both their lives. Maxwell had stepped down as CEO, though he remained the primary shareholder. Olivia had used the unexpected media attention to establish a foundation for emotional abuse survivors, funded initially by Maxwell but now operating independently. Their relationship had entered unfamiliar territory, no longer defined by transaction or manipulation, but not yet shaped into something either of them could easily name. "You're leaving tomorrow," Maxwell stated, joining her on the balcony. Not a question, but an acknowledgement of the plane ticket to London sitting on her kitchen counter, the start of the education she had deferred for too long. "Yes," she confirmed, "the psychology program starts next week. Will you be back?" His voice held that same neutral tone, but Olivia had learned to hear the subtle variations within it, the microscopic catch that indicated uncertainty. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "I need time to discover who I am without anyone else's definitions, without being seen through anyone else's lens." Maxwell nodded once, accepting this with the same precision with which he approached all data points. "I understand the logical necessity." A small smile touched Olivia's lips, but not the emotional reality. "That remains challenging," he admitted, "though less so than before you." They stood in companionable silence, watching lightning illuminate the distant skyline. So much remained unresolved: Rebecca's ultimate fate, the true nature of what had developed between them, the people they might become once freed from the patterns that had defined them. "I have something for you," Maxwell said finally, extending a small package wrapped in simple brown paper. Olivia unwrapped it carefully to find a leather-bound journal, similar to his but unmarked, its pages blank and waiting. "For recording your observations," he explained, "your own definitions, rather than those imposed by others." The gesture, so simple yet so profound in its recognition of her journey, brought unexpected tears to her eyes. "Thank you." "When you've filled those pages," Maxwell said quietly, "perhaps you'll share them with me." It wasn't a declaration of love. He still lacked the emotional language for such expressions. It wasn't a promise of forever. Both knew better than to offer certainties in an uncertain world. But it was an acknowledgement of connection, of the possibility that two people who had spent their lives in different forms of silence might someday find a shared vocabulary. The storm drew closer, lightning now visible over the city itself. "Stay for dinner?" Maxwell asked, the invitation deliberately casual. Olivia nodded, following him inside as the first heavy raindrops began to fall. Whatever lay ahead, whatever definitions they might eventually discover, tonight they would simply be two people, sharing a meal and conversation, the most ordinary and extraordinary of human connections. On the balcony table, the blank journal waited, its pages open to possibilities neither of them could yet name, but both were finally ready to explore. Dear listeners, we hope the journey of Olivia and Maxwell has captivated you as much as it did us. Their story reminds us that sometimes the most profound connections form in the silent spaces between words, where understanding transcends our ability to name what we feel. For more emotionally rich narratives that explore the complexities of human relationships, we've prepared a special playlist you can find by clicking to your left. If this story touched you, please subscribe to our channel and leave a like on this video. Every day we bring you unique tales that delve into life's intricacies and the extraordinary power of human connection. We can't wait to share our next